Welcome back to Off the Clock, episode 4, conducting productive interviews when building a high-performance team. We start with screening. So, Donald, what are some things that you really look for in the screening process for candidates to help flesh out the team, especially the team like we're building now?
So speaking from more of the purely technical aspect of this, obviously, mostly I want to see, okay, do they have experience with the stuff that we actually use or doing the type of work that we need them to do? And then in regards to their solution to our little assessment, and I'll go into a lot more detail on that here in a little bit, just does how they presented themselves match up with the quality and thought behind the solution that was provided.
Right. And I think that there are a couple more things that we look for in the screening process. Not only, technology's used, but domain knowledge. Has this person worked with software that's similar to what our solution is? We obviously, we do like a restaurant point of sale. So are we talking to someone who's worked with a point of sale before? Has this person worked in a restaurant before? Are they going to find this subject matter familiar things? Because I think that's also important.
Yeah. And not only just that, but especially when this is probably more what you could answer, but in terms of like what are they actually looking to do exactly?
Opportunity. Yeah. Opportunity is a huge thing. So right off the bat, I just want to say the top 5 things in my eyes for conducting a really good interview and really trying to find the right person for the right spot. You never want to really, hire a person just for a spot. You should be talking to people with spots in mind and figure out where you think they would fit best. And the best way to get that at are these 5 things: with the screening, assessing, the technical interview, the opportunity. So, how much does this person really want to grow? And one of the most important things that I think sometimes gets overlooked is a culture fit. Is this going to be a good culture fit for our team? So talking about the assessments. So the screening, we don't do a whole lot of screening at our level. We kind of talked about those in other episodes, episode 2 and 3, where we talked about, what happens during the screening process, you as an applicant, which you should be putting on your resume, things like that. So the screening is really, does this person fit the description of what we're looking for, like Donald said? Does this person have a good format to their resume? Can they speak? Are they not speaking well in front of other humans? Things like that. That stuff on the screening is really telling of who you're really going to be talking to. And past the screening, you have to know what you're getting, right? So we let's talk assessments, Donald. What do you look for when you are reviewing an assessment, a technical assessment, a coding challenge that someone submitted?
So depending on the position and what the tools are and what the assessment was, I try to look for, and I briefly mentioned this, does their experience match up with what was given to us as a solution? So I think we kind of passively brought this up in, it was the first episode, I forget what it was. But if you present that you have, if you're trying to apply for a QA automation job, and you present your resume saying, I have 6 years of experience doing this. Well, 6 years of experience is a lot of time doing something like this. And if you hand me a solution that looks like it's a baby's Hello World Selenium, I'm going to look at you a little weird. Now, again, and I think, but to caveat that, and I briefly touched on this at the end of the last episode, is a solution that works. If nothing else, the solution has to work. It has to do what it's meant to do. So in the case of our assessment, it's 5 very straightforward scenarios to automate. It shouldn't even take more than a few hours, if even that. And when you hand that in, well, the first thing we try to do is, does it work? Now, our assessment, we also leave it up to them in terms of what they use to do it, right? So like we use Node.js and WebDriver IO, but I actually don't think we've gotten a single solution that actually uses that. But we've gotten solutions in like Python and Java and all this stuff. Now, something I'm very anal about is if you turn in a solution, please put documentation into it. Okay, especially if you're presenting the solution in a tool chain that the people who you're like applying for don't use. And again, if if it's a job position should say what they use on there. So if you're handing in something that's something different, please at the very least say, here's how you run this thing. Very minimum, because I've had people hand in solutions where I go, I had no fucking clue how to run this. I can't verify whether it works or not. Which if that's the case, then I mean I don't know really what else to tell you, because if it don't work, I don't give a shit how pretty it is.
Right. Exactly.
Now, past that
communication, right? That's communication.
Yeah, because if you don't, if you don't document your own stuff, that don't tell me that you're going to document anything you do here, which is bad, because at some point your hands ain't gonna be touching shit anymore. So you have to at least put some kind of documentation. So if somebody picks it up, they know what this thing does. They know how to use it. They know how to work on it. All this stuff. Because probably one of the worst time sinks in this field is if you get to move over to another project, depending on the person, how well it's documented, this can greatly affect the overhead related to actually bringing on somebody onto a project. If it's actually documented well, that tends to substantially reduce that overhead. So past that, again, past the documentation, the next thing you want to look at is, depending on what you're doing, what you need to look for, are they doing best practices? Are they, in the case of automation, are they using page objects? Are they, separating the tests out into their own autonomous units? Or it's not, and I am very guilty of this. The very first time I did any kind of automation, like years ago, does the test does test B depend on test A passing? you don't want that. No. Because if what happens is if you don't do that, well, you get a bunch of false positives about tests failing. But it's like, no, it didn't really fail. It's just the first test didn't pass, so everything else fails. That's not that. That's flaky shit, man. Aside from that, I am pretty open about how solutions are implemented. Again, depending on all these factors sort of combined into one whole documentation. Did you put some thought into like how you name stuff so it's obvious like what it's for or what it does? Is stuff again, are you trying to use some kind of best practices? If they are, if you don't know what they are, and this relates back to what I was saying I document the crap out of my solution. Just say, hey, I found out later this was a thing. If I was to refactor this, I would probably try to shift more towards this pattern or architecting this solution this way. If somebody does stuff like that, like I at least have fairly decent confidence that you'll be able to grow into the position at the very least. Right. And that's maybe I should even speak on that a little more about the whole growing thing. I think some companies are too often trying to find somebody who's like they constructed like the perfect image of what they wanted, right? And when they bring them in, that's what they are looking for. But unless you get lucky or the stars align, that's not who's going to walk in the door. It's somebody who checks most of the boxes or some of the boxes, but not all of them. So you have to look at what they're doing and go, okay, I know they don't check all these boxes, but do I feel confident that there's a low risk? Again, we're going back to the whole risk and value proposition. Are they a low risk of bringing on because I think they should be able to learn what they don't learn and check the other boxes?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's huge, right? Because we don't want folks who know everything and think that they're subject matter experts on everything. Yes, we do need some of those folks that are subject matter experts, but we need subject matter experts that are continuing to grow and stay up to date with the current technologies and things like that. So even subject matter experts have growing to do.
Yep.
Right. And that's something that we really want to dig into as part of the interview process. We want to find out the opportunity. What kind of opportunity is this candidate looking for? Especially, folks who want to start learning those technical skills. We keep bringing up QA because that's the space we work in. Yep. But everyone wants to automate, right? Everyone wants to automate. Everyone wants to use Selenium. But at the end of the day, not everyone has the technical skill set to push that. Yep. and to learn that. Some folks, that's just not for them once they start in. But trying to find those folks who want to do things that they don't really necessarily know how to do, and trying to gauge whether or not they're going to be able to actually do the things that they want to do. And I think that kind of boils down to the culture fit as well. Our team is a young team. It's a fast moving team, and we're constantly evolving. And we need to look for folks who are okay with that, who are okay with priority shifting, who are okay with, holy shit, we need to learn something like on the fly so that way we can do this. Trying to identify those folks, opportunity, culture fit kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, but about the culture fit part, can you tell us what you actually look for? Like, how do you vet if somebody's a culture fit?
And it's just, I've done so many interviews that, the people that can talk, the people that can make a joke, the people that can hold a conversation without talking about anything related to the job. Ask a person what their favorite animal is. If you could ride any animal to work, what would you do? And if they can have a conversation about it, that's someone you can talk to. Not saying that if they can't have a conversation about it, they're not a good candidate or a good culture fit, but having those questions, asking folks because we're remote work. We're all remote. We're spread across the world. Mm-hmm. We have folks in the US, Poland, and Mexico on the team. How do you do working for a remote manager? If you're having an issue at home with a coworker, how do you escalate that remotely? Who do you talk to? Things like that. Asking folks that, the biggest thing for us is, the pace at which we switch context. And so asking someone, if they're okay with having like 3 or 4 multiple high priority issues that they're working on and being able to switch between them, kind of painting that picture and seeing how they do and asking them, how do you handle these stressful situations? How do you handle work-related stress is a great question to ask. And, it's varied, the responses, but the folks that really know how to handle it, they kind of go into detail. Oh yeah. When it's stressful, I go for a walk and I do this, or I step away for 15 minutes and I put on some heavy metal and my headphones or whatever. The folks who are actually practicing that can tell you what they do. So those kind of questions, more on a personal level, you're trying to get more than just what their professional stakes are here. And that's really what it is. Personally, on a personal level, do you think this person will mesh well with your team? And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be a conversationalist, right?
Yeah.
We can have people that don't even talk, but they could be a good mesh with the team because they listen, because they know, they understand, they comprehend, they can provide the support needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, because I'm one of these people that doesn't actively talk very much unless you come to me with the conversation generally. I mean, obviously I'll reach out if I need to reach out, but in terms of I don't know, just what do you call it? Water cooler banter? I don't really do that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
About the stress part, just don't get stressed, forehead. That's what I do. I just don't get stressed about it.
Sure, I don't. Yeah, so do I, man. So do I. But by 9:15 every morning, I'm fucking stressed. So.
So besides, I talked about what I look for like in the assessment solution. I didn't really talk about like when I'm actually doing like the follow up technical interview. What do I talk about?
Right.
So now in this regard, I ask the questions that I referenced in the last episode about like what you should kind of prepare for. So generally you either are actively taking or submitted some kind of solution to an assessment or something, or did like some kind of exercise. While you're doing it or when they bring you in for the follow-up interview, I'm going to ask you about it. I'm going to ask you, hey, you submitted this solution in Python using this framework. Why'd you do that? Like why did you make that decision? I mean, don't word it that way. It's like I'm like drilling you like a drill sergeant. Like, why'd you do that? But like, like tell me why you picked this. And
Right.
I'm looking to see some kind of thought there. Like, I've used this before, and I know, I'm comfortable with using this to like create flexible solutions. Just demonstrate that you didn't just like brain didn't default to that. You went, how should I do this? You put some thought into it. Right. Another thing I typically commonly ask if they say they know some tool is I'll basically ask them some filter questions. Basically meaning, if you say you know this and you can't answer this question, you're full of shit. So an example of this would be, we'll go with the QA automation stuff. So if somebody says, that they know a fair bit about Selenium or something, and I'll go, okay, maybe I'll look at their solution and go, so I see that you didn't use XPath as any of your selectors. Why didn't you do that? And it's kind of worded in a way that it would trip them up to thinking like they did something wrong. Like, why didn't you do that? But no, like you shouldn't, because your tests are less flaky when you have selectors that don't change. But if they know that, then they'll actually say, well, you don't want to use XPath because XPath is very dependent upon the current state of the DOM, and if barely any changes are happening, all of a sudden the test breaks. I'd be like, okay, good. You know what you're talking about. Right. Or I brought this up before. Another example would be is if you say that you know some stuff about React, or that like a half decent bit about like React, the front end framework React, and I go, okay, why would you choose to make a component a class versus a function? This is a very basic thing that anybody that's read it like React over a weekend would know. And if you can't answer that, then you're full of shit. You don't know this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What about multi-part questions? Right. I think those are also very telling. Tell me about a time where a bug got released to production. How did you handle that? How did you escalate it? How did you make sure it never happened again? How did you make sure it was actually fixed and got deployed to production right this time? Things like that. Do you how beneficial do you think those are when trying to talk to people and see if they're going to be a good fit?
I think maybe those questions have some merit. I think to some extent I might take issue with those questions to some extent, which is when I ask a question, if you or whoever or I ask a question like that and they try to explain as best they can, I feel like it's hard to really maybe explain the situation or like what you did to resolve it very well, because a lot of what was happening or like what happened is very like context dependent. And if you're obviously not someone who was involved with the solution, some of that context might get left out intentionally or not, that maybe don't make that sound as, I guess, like as a strong of an answer as you would hope that it'd been.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I get it. I use them sometimes. I don't use them. I would say that I don't even use them often. Right. I use them sometimes, especially if I'm trying to get someone to talk, and sometimes that's a hard thing to do, is to get someone to talk who may be, have, introverted or social anxiety, things like that. Those challenging situations for people. So always trying to come in and you get more bees with honey, right? You don't want to come in acting like this person doesn't know what they're talking about. You want to get them talking and make them feel comfortable talking about their experiences.
Yeah. And this isn't even technically, this isn't like a technical interview specific thing. Maybe this is different because some companies may have, like, I don't know, some kind of rules about how you I guess portray and act on like these types of interviews. But generally, like, I am extremely like, it's basically how we're talking right now is how I would talk in an interview. Like, I'm not here to give you a test. I'm not here to drill you. I just want to have a conversation. Because I'm going to learn more from just having conversation than sitting here and asking you a bunch of shit off a checklist.
Yeah, no, I agree. My interviews are never scripted. I don't ever even have a list in front of me of questions. I just kind of take my tool belt and, go into a conversation. Every conversation is different.
Yep.
And I think if you go in, it's okay to have a list of questions that you want to ask, but to go in scripted, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, when you were talking about like multi-part questions, I think another reason why I don't usually have to ask those is because oftentimes if you just engage in a genuine conversation about like, what they've done or like how they've used different tech and different tools and old jobs, at some point they usually bring up a situation. Like maybe they don't go into detail about it, but they're like, oh yeah, there's this one time I had to use, I don't know, PyTest for automation. I'll be like, oh really? What did you do? How did you do that? Like I don't have to ask. They just basically just say it, and I just go, oh yeah, just keep telling me a little more about it. And then bam, there's the multi-part question without me having to actually like forcibly ask it.
Right. Tell me about your day-to-day at your current role, and they will answer most of those kind of, industry standard questions that you would ask.
Yeah.
Pay attention. And when they're talking about that, take things out of that answer and ask targeted questions about.
Mm-hmm.
I get in and I go through the automation run log and I fix any tests that may have come broken. All right, put that in your memory bank. Okay, so when you say you're fixing a test, what do you mean? Are you fixing a scenario? Are you handling code changes? Are you just making sure or going through and seeing where things fail and then report it to a developer? What is your role in that?
Yeah.
So things like that. Take the things that they say and dig in deeper.
Yeah.
Especially the things that they're passionate about.
Yeah. Generally, when you're talking to somebody, if you can, you just want to listen as much as possible. Which means all you basically do is just keep asking questions in response to what they say. Because if you keep doing that, at some point you're going to kind of get to the, I guess the root of exactly what they know and what they've done. And if at that point you can basically figure out, okay, this is who this person is, this is what they've done, and this is what they can probably do.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So to summarize things, when you're talking to potential candidates, during the screening, assessing, technical interviews, listen. You had to listen to them. You had to get them talking. You had to hear their stories and interject. It's a conversation, and it's a conversation. It's an important one. Hey, we need help. Are you the person that can help us? Are you going to be able to lean on us for the help that you need to grow in your career? And is this person going to help the team? If putting this person here is going to help the team, then it's a yes. And I always tell all the hiring managers and the folks who make the hiring decisions with our team, I always tell them, if it's not a hell yes right off rip, let's talk about it.
Yeah. And
let's see, because if it's not a hell yes, there's a reason. And I'm not saying that everyone has to be a hell yes to get hired.
Yeah.
But to get hired, but being able to talk about why it's not a hell yes, and give examples of why it's not a hell yes. 3 or 4 little red flags could turn out to be a huge red flag that's like, no,
Yeah.
So being able to do that, I think is really an important part of building a team that is scalable and can work in a high capacity.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in for episode 4. We will be back with episode 5, how to go about the negotiation portion of the interview process. So we will see you next time.